So, picking up from that theme of ancient Near Eastern archetypes represented in the Book of Mormon through the Lamanites and through the Nephites, it's important to recognize that in good Near Eastern fashion, the Nephites are depicted as the sedentary, civilized city dwellers who are in constant conflict with the nomadic and bloodthirsty group dwelling in the wilderness, the Lamanites. And that's certainly the portrayal throughout most of the Book of Mormon that we encounter between these two groups. And recognizing this portrayal, when we approach a variety of texts from the Book of Mormon itself, many of these passages come alive with additional meaning. I would draw your attention then to the book of Enos, which tells the story of Enos' experience wrestling with God in the wilderness. Enos, who is a Book of Mormon prophet and the son of Jacob, the nephew of Nephi. So Enos, who appears as one of the scribes who kept the small plates of Nephi, alludes to the ancestor after whom his father was named in the Old Testament or Hebrew Bible, Jacob, who in the book of Genesis was renamed Yisrael, or Israel, by a man with whom he wrestled all night. And that account appears in Genesis 32, verses 24 through 28. Now, Enos, it appears at least, may have had this exact event in mind when he wrote of the wrestle which he had before God, when he sought a remission of his sins, as described in his account from the Book of Mormon. So as Enos takes and begins to describe his experience in the wilderness, it's interesting that he specifically uses the term to wrestle, which is evidently his effort to refer not only to his struggle to overcome sin, but also to his prayers for, again, these two distinct groups within the Book of Mormon, Lamanites versus Nephites. And he does this in verses 9 through 18. So in the account, Enos writes of the struggling in the spirit that he experiences while praying for his own people in verse 10. He notes that he prayed unto God with many long strugglings for his brethren, the Lamanites, in verse 11. So similar terminology then to Enos's appears in Alma 8:10, where we read that Alma labored much in the Spirit. I'm quoting this. Alma labored much in the Spirit, wrestling with God in mighty prayer, that he would pour out his Spirit upon the people who were in the city, that he would also grant that he might baptize, them unto repentance. End of quote. So these examples suggest that wrestling with God in the Book of Mormon can refer to prayer in behalf of those who have fallen away from the truth. Now, this is an important insight then to interpret Enos' experience in the wilderness correctly. Because in a similar fashion, Jacob from the Old Testament may have been praying for his brother Esau during his wrestle with the angel. Now, recall from the previous presentation that in the Old Testament, Jacob is described as the sedentary, tent-dwelling brother who is in conflict with Esau, the nomadic hunter, very much like Nimrod of old. And so it's possible that, again, in a related manner to what we encounter in the Book of Mormon with Enos praying for his brethren, the Lamanites. Enos representing the sedentary population of the Nephites versus the nomadic hunters, the Lamanites, who his people are in constant conflict with. So at that time, Jacob in the Old Testament was returning to his homeland, remember, after he sojourned for what the biblical account portrays as 2 decades in the land of Syria. And he had left, of course, on extremely bad terms with Esau, who wants to take the life of his brother for having usurped his position in the family unit. And that appears in Genesis 27. So in the midst of his efforts to pacify Esau with gifts, Jacob prays, it appears from the biblical account, that God would deliver him and his family from his brother specifically. Now that's in Genesis 32. So in the Book of Mormon, the Nephites and Lamanites, for whom Enos prays, appear very much like Jacob and Esau from the Old Testament. Nephi, like Jacob, had to flee with his family because his elder brothers Laman and Lemuel tried to kill him. Nephi's people were settled and industrious, constructing a temple and other buildings, whereas the Lamanites, according to 2 Nephi 5:24, became an idle people, full of mischief and subtlety, and did seek in the wilderness for beast of prey, one of the earliest descriptions. Again, drawing upon this traditional understanding of two opposite groups who are in perennial conflict with one another that reflects all of ancient Near Eastern tradition and ultimately the archetypes that appear running throughout the Book of Mormon. So again, then, considering Enos's account, Enos later provides this description of the Lamanites, and this is in verse 20 of his book. Quote, "They became wild and ferocious and a bloodthirsty people, full of idolatry and filthiness, feeding upon beasts of prey, dwelling in tents and wandering about in the wilderness with a short skin girdle about their loins and their heads shaven. Their skill was with the bow." End of quote. Now, related to this, the Bible describes Esau as a cunning hunter, a man of the field in Genesis chapter 25, verse 26, who loved to hunt with the bow specifically. And that's in Genesis 27, 1 through 5. So before God forgave his sins, we read in Enos's account that he went to hunt beasts in the forest, where he remembered the words of his father, which prompted Enos to seek forgiveness from God. So it's interesting that Enos would, in his account, specifically describe himself as a hunter in the wilderness. Okay? And so Enos very well may have been intentionally comparing his pre-converted self to the Lamanites and to Esau. And again, this account from the Book of Mormon really comes alive when we recognize the traditional understanding of the two different types, the archetypes of Near Eastern people in constant and perennial conflict with one another. Enos draws upon this, links himself, it would appear, with the nomadic hunters, the Lamanites, and expresses a sincere hope for eventual reconciliation and restitution between the two groups.
One of these days, I'm gonna sit down and write a long letter to all the good friends I've known.